So something interesting that I also experienced while visiting, but also heard about, is that Lebenswasser described as a diverse and multilingual congregation. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. And that was one of the things where we were actually pushing the cultural boundaries a bit, especially 5-6 years ago. We brought in simultaneous translation into Spanish via headphones.
Yeah.
And we still do it every single Sunday.
Yeah.
And so we all of a sudden started getting Spanish people showing up to church. And we've had Spanish couples, like where both the husband and the wife are Spanish, come to our church and get involved and serve and be members and 100% involved in the church community. Yeah. We've had that, which was not very common in the community. And so that definitely pushed that whole cultural boundary. But then we also have in Lebenswasser a heavy presence of people that come from Canada that speak English. Yeah. Kind of like me and my wife.
Yeah.
And so that creates another multicultural deal. And all of our leadership couples are like that, which also has influenced the church quite a bit, in that we do church maybe a little bit differently than what's been done around here a lot, because of the influence that we've had from the US and Canada. And so we kind of have those three cultures that we deal with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on a typical Sunday morning, like a good place to see that in action is in our kids' church. We have kids there that speak just Spanish and nothing else. We have kids there that speak just English and nothing else. Yeah. And we have kids there that speak just Low German and nothing else.
Oh, yeah.
So it definitely makes it a challenge
absolutely.
to try and bridge all of that. So in the kids' church is where we see it even stronger yet than in adult church. In adult church, we are very open about it. We are called to serve the Low German speaking people primarily. Yeah. And so everything that we do in church, our preaching and all of that, our announcements, our MC and all that, this is strived to be done in Low German only. Yeah. And we make a real effort to not go into English or even Spanish, just because we feel called to serve that group of people. Yeah. In kids' church, that's not nearly as easy to do. Yeah. Because not everybody's on the same base as far as Low German goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So you talked a little bit about primarily the language for stuff going on in the church is Low German. I noticed some Spanish language worship music.
Yep. When we sing in all four languages, actually. Spanish, English, Low German, and High German. Actually, that was another area where we pushed a cultural boundary. We started singing in Low German and translating songs into Low German that were well known in English or Spanish worship songs. And we were one of the first ones to do that. Now there's more churches that are doing that, and I think it's awesome. But to see the way people connected with worshiping God in the same language as what they spoke at home around the supper table was amazing. Yeah. Because in this community, it's very much that in church, you speak High German. Yeah. Even though many people don't know it well, they don't understand it well. Yeah. It's almost kind of gives you this impression that God speaks High German and we all speak Low German, right? Absolutely. And so we've tried to break down that whole misconception. Yeah. And so singing in Low German was one of the ways. Now we actually sing a good chunk, probably half of our songs are in Low German now. So that's been a transition. But that's one of the ways that we want to get people to be able to live out their spiritual life in the same language as what they do their everyday life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was a question that I had, because it seems like up until recently there weren't many Low German materials available for worship, or a lot of multimedia production being done in Low German. So how do you guys feel like you've kind of been on the forefront of that, the production of materials in Low German?
Yeah. Primarily, we've done it by way of exactly the Low German worship, and then also we've been producing our messages in Low German and sending them out on podcasts and apps and video and all that. And so that has helped push it out into the forefront. We would like to be more a part of that in the future, creating actually more written material. And we actually have a lady in our church, for example, she just wrote a book 100% in Low German and produced it and printed it, and it's out in circulation now. how to raise kids God's way type of thing.
Yeah.
And so there's more of that coming out as part of what we feel our call is. And it's been interesting too, because the Low German language itself is being developed more and more as we speak. And it is actually officially a language now, finally.
Yeah.
For the last couple of years, no longer just a dialect. And so there is actually a group of people that are actively developing and pushing it as a language. And there's more resources becoming available. Like for instance, in Bolivia right now, they're creating a full school curriculum in Low German from kindergarten to grade 9. Their eventual goal is all the way to grade 12. And so it's not just a Low German class, it's actually a Low German curriculum to do all of school in. So it's becoming developed, and we want to be a part of that. We want to help push it, and we want to be at the forefront of it, because there's a lot of people that's their conversational language. And so we feel, if we're going to speak it anyways, then let's at least learn the language. Let's learn how to write it. Let's learn how to read it. Let's learn how to produce content in it, so that we can reach more people.
Yeah, absolutely. That was something that struck me during the service, was seeing up on the screen the different points from the sermon in Low German, and seeing it written. And this, like, primarily, the experience in the past, growing up in Seminole was like, okay, this is an oral language. Everything written is in High German. And so that was really interesting for me to see. And then I think, a lot of people gaining literacy in Low German, like it's just a whole new thing.
And that's actually one of the reasons why we came up with that idea of, like, I use a TV beside me when I preach, and that's where I put my presentation, and I do it all in Low German. We did that. One of the main reasons was specifically to help people learn how to read it and to get used to seeing it, the Low German language written. And also we do it because we want our messages to be practical, and so that they can live it out and it applies to their life. And so we like to teach it in such a way so that they remember it easier. And so that's another area where we have pushed the boundaries a little bit, because there's really no other churches around here doing that in Low German. It is still very much like, if as soon as you write something, it's written in High German, but the talking is done in Low German. Another thing that we've made quite an effort is reading the Bible in our church. We read it always in Low German. Whereas in, again, most churches around here, the preacher might speak in Low German already in some cases, but he would for sure read the Bible in High German. And so we've moved away from that, again, tying into this idea that our faith language should be the same language that we speak at home around the table. And so that's why we really strive to do everything in Low German. I mean, it's definitely come at a cost, because I don't read and write Low German fluently. So now I have to type up my stuff in Low German. So it's a challenge. But I mean, there's computer programs in Low German that help with all that.
Absolutely.
So it's been developing more and making it easier for guys like us who want to get into the language to do it in a more excellent way. One thing that we do is, through some missions outreaches, we partner up with a couple of different organizations. One of them is actually Vida 180. And it's a orphanage that's here in Cuauhtemoc. It's actually run by a couple from our church, and they have just Spanish kids in the orphanage. And so the church has teamed up and support them, and in prayer and financially, and we go and visit and hang out with them and things like that. So it's through outreach programs more so than it is through an integrated part of ministry. We do have, like I said, we have some Spanish people in church, and so we have a small groups program in our church. So we have a Spanish small group, and it's integrated in that sense. But we also have an organization that we support in the mountains doing ministry to the indigenous in Zacatecas, which is a different state further south. And we have a good partnership there with a Spanish pastor that lives in the mountains ministering to the indigenous. Actually, one of our church guys is on the board there. He's been a part of that ministry for 13 years or so. And so we have a strong relationship there. We support another missions cause here more locally in the mountains to the indigenous population. So by way of outreach, we have that primary connection. We've also started developing some relationships with Spanish-speaking churches in the community. There's a new church starting in Cuauhtemoc that's coming from Delicias. And so just developing a relationship there with the pastor. Actually, about 2 months ago, we did a joint youth worship night with their church and our church.
Yeah.
Obviously, the event is done in Spanish then.
Yeah.
But we did it at our church. And so our worship team played half the set, and then the pastor came up and preached in Spanish. Their pastor preached in Spanish. Then their team came up and played the last part of the worship set. And then the youth just hung out all together. So we had about 280 youth, just, half of them roughly from the Spanish-speaking community, half from the Mennonite-speaking community.
Yeah.
And we just did that specifically as a cross-cultural event to try and improve the relationship between the different cultures.
Oh, wonderful.